This is a Guide Your Light Network production, creating podcasts with purpose. Hey you, welcome back to the podcast. Just before we jump in, I wanted to let you know about something exciting I have been working on. As you might know, I'm incredibly passionate about helping people to find and share their voice, especially if their voice is one that aims to create positive change in others' lives. So I've been working intentionally to bring that mission to life, and I have launched a podcast network with purpose. It is called the Guide Your Light Network, that features podcasts and voices that inspire, educate, and transform listeners. And we have a library of podcasts that are part of our network that truly embody that mission, and we are looking for more. If this has sparked interest in you and you are ready to start exploring speaking and using your voice in this way, I'd love for you to check it out. If you have something important to say and don't know where to start to bring that to life, we can also help to hold your hand to craft your authentic message through our Guide Your Light sessions, where you can get super clear on your intention, messaging, and structure needed to launch a podcast of your own that is authentically you. Just head over to guideyourlightnetwork.com to find out more. Hey everybody, I'm Maritza Barone, and this is the Things You Can't Unhear podcast. Has there ever been a moment in your life where you heard or read or were told something that you simply could not unhear? Something that caused you to make positive changes so that you could become the best version of yourself? Well, we share this show with access to inspiring and empowering humans who will motivate you to become the happiest, healthiest, kindest, and most compassionate you. Sit back, settle in, and let this be the day you hear something that simply cannot be unheard. Hello, welcome back to Things You Can't Unhear. I'm your host, Maritza Barone. I'm so happy you clicked play on this episode. Today we are going to be delving into the world of meditation, and bear with me, this is not just sitting there and silencing ourselves for 20 minutes at a time. This is so much deeper. There is so much to meditation. It's been around, as we know, for thousands of years, and the benefits of practicing are absolutely endless. Thankfully, in recent years, meditation has once again become more mainstream. It's helping us with things like stress, anxiety, mental and physical well-being, sleeplessness, elevated consciousness, self-awareness, and so much more. And today on this episode, we are going to chat to Nicho Plowman, a Vedic meditation teacher and the co-founder of the world's largest online meditation community, Insight Timer, which I'm sure you are aware of. And he's also the founder of Edmund and Amelia, which is a travel company facilitating meditation retreats around the world. How cool is that? Nicho is going to talk to us about how meditation can be adapted into a modern lifestyle. So we're no longer in monasteries practicing meditation. We are in everyday real life. How does that fit in? Today, Nicho shares with us the 180-degree flip his life took, going from a busy corporate career and a high-stress, boozy lifestyle to integrating Vedic meditation into his life as a daily practice and becoming a meditation teacher. He found meditation at 39 years old, and now, a decade on, it's become an absolutely significant part of his life and has transformed his lifestyle, his relationships, and even the way he does business consciously. We delve deep in this episode into Nicho's fascinating story and the lessons meditation has given him. At 50 years old, Nicho feels like life is just starting. He is a truly inspiring human, showing us what is possible when we consciously connect to our inner compass and what he calls sitting in the conscious cinema of life. You know, it's in stories like these that we find the courage to, maybe create one small step to make a positive difference in our lives. Go to that yoga or meditation class. Pick up that book. Listen to that podcast. Share it with someone who you think needs it. Ask questions. Create inspired change. to plant those seeds to a happier and more purposeful existence. I know you're going to love this conversation. Let me know what you think at Maritza_Barone on Instagram or on the Things You Can't Unhear page. Welcome, Nicho Plowman, to the Things You Can't Unhear podcast, the charming Nicho Plowman.
Thank you for having me, Maritza. It's lovely to be here.
I heard you liked that word, charming. I've been listening to a couple of your podcast episodes, and that's a word that you enjoy using. So I thought, you know what, I'll bring it in today as well.
It was funny when it's used back the other way, so thank you. Yeah, I think maybe it's a bit of an old school word, isn't it? But if we think about it, sometimes when things are charming and we like to follow things that are it kind of sums it up okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to maybe incorporate that word into my world as well. So you are a Vedic meditation teacher. You launched the very successful Insight Timer, which has over 22 million users. And you are the founder of Edmund and what?
Yes.
Yes.
Which is a meditation retreats company. And that's right. I mean, I should just clarify that in actual fact, my brother Christopher and I, we bought Insight Timer. So we are, I guess, for want of a better word, we still consider ourselves co-founders. We bought it a long time ago. When I say a long time ago, it's now 8 years ago in April. So someone else did actually start that a long, long time ago. It's the first meditation app on the App Store. But just to clarify that, yeah, we've done that and it's been a really great story. My brother's the CEO, so he plays a much more important role than me, but, we've done something great together. So that's part of it. But yes, and I teach Vedic meditation. That's right.
You're so humble already. I can hear that humbleness within you just to, put it out there that other people are genuinely helping this mission that you are also on. And I really love that. I love hearing that.
Well, yeah, it's no question. I mean, there's an amazing team of people. There's 70 people at Insight Timer. So, but look, it came from a great, I think our desire to do something in that space came from Christopher's and my, I was teaching meditation. He'd learned meditation. We'd been on retreat in India. We'd both done a lot in business ourselves and technology and things. And we kind of felt my challenge as a meditation teacher was that I kind of felt that there wasn't really tools and those things to be able to quickly move and teach. And I thought, well, if I've got that problem with someone who kind of knows what they're doing, maybe other practitioners would. So we thought, what would be a way that we could provide a platform for teachers to sort of give up their day job was the way that we put it. And, we're still at that process, but that was how it started. And then we bought that and it's sort of been it's been grown organically. We've never advertised, which is pretty extraordinary to think that, 23 million people have downloaded that all via word of mouth. So that's that. It's sort of one of a few things I do, but it's a good feel one, that one for sure.
Feels good that I'm one of those 23 million people. That's it.
No.
Very, very transformative app. And when meditation comes into our lives, meditation sometimes finds us, I believe, when we need it the most. It can really change the trajectory of what goes on for the remaining existence of our lives. So I'd love to know where it found you and how it changed you.
So I'm 50 now. From about the age of 30 to 38, I would explore. I was just always curious. I wasn't living a very healthy lifestyle. I burned the candle at both ends through my 20s, living overseas, traveling, doing like good fun stuff. But, even approaching 30, early 30s, I'd still be curious about maybe learning another yoga technique, or maybe I'd learn a guided meditation practice, or maybe I'd go somewhere. So I wasn't just all living the fast life. There was parts of me that knew that there were ways to just alleviate some of that suffering. So I did that, but that continued through my 30s and nothing really stuck. I was quite sort of all or nothing, a little bit extreme in my thinking. Married at 32, my two oldest daughters, India and Elkie, were born 33, 34. Anyway, that's all going on, building businesses, running around. So, but I kept bouncing off things, and I probably thought I wasn't a very good meditator. And a lot of people will say that. It's like, I've tried meditation, but I'm no good at it, or I'm thinking all the time, or it's too hard. So I put a few of them in too hard basket. I read The Power of Now, I think when I was about 32, Eckhart Tolle, and I thought that was the first book that I'd read in that space. And then I read the autobiography of a yogi, and I kind of went down that path too, as often people do when something starts to awaken in them, you're going to start to maybe read some things. And anyway, I then learned Vedic meditation from a guy called Tim Brown, who lives in Paddington in Sydney, Australia. almost 13 years ago, and the technique was different to others that I'd practiced. It was more practical, I thought. It was 20 minutes in the morning, 20 minutes in the afternoon. I found I could do it anywhere. And this technique just stuck with me. And there were a series of things that happened relatively soon beyond that point after learning, even in that shearing 12 months, which really sort of was feedback. This was the path to move down, and a bunch of things subsequently happened, and that became I did a complete 180. Completely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
So I know a lot of people in this space at the moment who are in their 180 and really trying to figure things out and picking up the books and listening to the podcasts and being curious and questioning everything about everything that they always knew in this fast-paced life and going, hang on a minute, I really need to slow the hell down because I'm not happy and this is not working. What was a result of you making that huge change in your life? Like, how did things shift? How did life change? How did your relationships look? How was it? What was it?
I'm now nearly 13 years down that path, and there is literally the before I learned Vedic meditation moment and the after. There is a different version of whatever, what I was then compared to what they're now, and that journey's been continuing. And the journey, those paths, they're not easy. They come with a lot of doubt. They come with a lot of questioning around identity and relationships, and all sorts of things will change, because change is the only thing going on. It's just to what extent are we prepared to engage with change progressively, as opposed to having change come along and, sort of take things in their own hands, because that's often pretty destructive. And so, if I could start in that, look, I'm sort of trying to piece things together and come back to a good answer to your question, but, and I don't like to sort of do the great big general stuff, but, the brushstrokes around those things, what are those pillars of what maybe looks like, what's our health like? Do you know what I mean? And I can say that before I learned to meditate, at least that technique, I looked fine. I was fit on the outside, but I wasn't very healthy in terms of my understanding around food and alcohol and recreational drugs and all sorts of things. So just not healthy in that regard. This, flip it on the other side. And by the way, before I learned to meditate, a body full of inflammation. And I've talked about this before. My lower back was absolutely shot to pieces. And I would have felt that I had I had the physical capability of a person much older than me, just purely because of the chronic problem I had with my back. I can sit here today and say that I don't even know that my back, I don't even have a bad back, and I'm 50, and I just was in a gym this morning doing all sorts of stuff, and it's just extraordinary to know that even on that basic physical and health, level of health, such radical changes, I still am really quite surprised by that. But so everything changes. Physically you change, your aspect of change, like towards things changes. And I know I've talked about this analogy before, and I'm not the first person to talk about it, but what really happens when one learns to meditate, regardless of technique, is that before at the age of 38, I was in my movie, but it was not a very good movie. I mean, it was stressful. I was overwhelmed by it. I was obviously overwhelmed by it by virtue of the fact that I was self-medicating and doing things, working like workaholic-ish, and no balance, because what I was trying to do from that front row of that conscious cinema was alleviate the pressure of the movie. The movie was just too much. It was too much stimuli. So I was in this constant state of fight or flight. I was probably feeling anxious. There was a whole bunch of things going on, and I would turn around and really adopt the wrong tools, momentarily feeling better if you have a glass of wine or whatever else you're going to have. But of course, the result of that continuous is that you get further front row and the body gets more unhealthy. Flip that all on its head. Regular meditators would turn around and start to say that because they are releasing stress and fatigue and tension and those things from their body, they feel like they come back a row and another row in their conscious cinema gradually. And at some point, it's like, movie's not too bad. In actual fact, interesting, I've got a bit more perspective on things. I feel a bit better. I'm sleeping a bit better. My relationships, and because it's all about relationships, that's what our external experience is. It's the relative. My relationships appear to be changing. I'm understanding things a bit better. Maybe in actual fact, I feel a bit more comfortable to push into a bit of change and lean into some discomfort because I've got a bit more of a foundation to what's going on. So really what happened post learning to meditate was that I came back in my conscious cinema. Yeah, and I've continued to do so. And anyone who learns to meditate, I think, could actually relate to that as a reasonable analogy for what's going on. And so we get perspective, but of course then our body is going to start feeling better. And because we're not reacting so consistently to things, then we're going to not be in that state of fight or flight. The chemical makeup changes. we feel better. We're processing stress during the day, so we're not processing at night lying in bed, which is the reason why we all lie in bed at night, not sleeping, because our body's processing stress. So I'm trying to make sure that I've got around to the part of that question which has an answer in it, but that was it. I came back in my conscious cinema, and that led to a whole bunch of different things along the way.
I find that fascinating. I think when we hear people like you speaking about this and how it's changed your life, we can think it's too hard, or how is that going to happen overnight? But it's not an overnight thing, is it? It's a continual practice where we have to keep going. And you're probably still going, I'm assuming.
Yeah, I mean, look, I had such a substantial 180 that I decided I had to teach, and I ended up selling a company was involved with, and I was overdue the kind of screeching turnaround and drive in the other direction. But you see, the thing is though, what really I think so come back to that point, do things happen overnight? It's to what extent have we done enough research running another model and suffering that we decide one day that enough's enough. And it might not be you sit up and go, I've had enough of suffering, I'm going to go and do this. It's like, I've ended up walking into a meditation course, and you may not remember the reason that you were there, but there was something about you turning up at that moment which you kind of knew you had to do. And then you've learned a technique, whichever one it be, and then you've continued with it, and you've continued with it, and you've continued with it, you see? And so I think I never know the reason that maybe I went and did it that day, but looking back on it, I think I had done enough research in a place that was ultimately painful that I'd had enough, and I had to go the other way. And so it does become this very gradual step into something different, and it's not easy, and it is challenging for anyone who is deciding that they wish to meditate regularly, live better, be more healthy, sleep better, those types of things, and then ultimately change their life. Well, it is a journey, and we can talk about the mythos of it. It's a road left traveled. It's the hero's journey. It goes on and on, but everyone has it in them to tread their own path. And the thing about that path is that it's a very individual one. It's different for everybody, but when you walk it somewhat on your own, you trust where you've come from. And this is a very important part of that, is that when you can look back on what little rocky, wiggly path you decided to take out of the wilderness, it gives you confidence about where you wish to go with it. Because it hasn't been that you've had to turn around and cry for help and give everyone to come in and rush in and solve things. You're like, I did that. And it means that as you exercise that muscle of self-sufficiency, pushing into discomfort, self-agency around health and things like that, then that's kind of where I think we all have the capacity to get to, which is an idea of potential, an idea of self-sufficiency. I've said that, but that was it for me. And I think once people start moving in that direction, nature gives feed. Nature starts to talk back. It's like, keep coming. And sometimes those messages can be a bit faint. They can be a little bit confusing. Geez, really? Am I going to go over here and do this and change that and change this relationship and, maybe not do that and maybe do this? And there's a challenge to it. But the reason why it's challenging is it's moving into something new. And if the only direction under all of it that we're all looking at is that everything is evolving all the time, what extent are we going to part of that evolution? And so I think more and more we can exercise that, call it exercise the muscle, might not be the right word, around let's just be progressively and consistently ensuring that there is change underway, because things that don't change end up actually falling out the backside of things. And of course, they'll end up in a more destructive phase. And I would have ended up in a very destructive phase if it hadn't been that I'd gone in that direction.
I want to know about that aha moment that you had when I think there were astrology charts involved, but when you decided you were quitting your company and heading in a completely new direction.
Yeah, well, look, if you and your audience could bear with me for a few minutes, so I can just sort of tell it, because I always think about this as an aha moment, but I'd been meditating for 8 months. I was always exploring things, and I'd happily go and see someone who might do your chart. I went and saw a woman who did my chart one day, and in the background is a business that I hadn't been really that happy in. I'd been an investor in it 7 years prior. I ended up running it. It was a technology company in the sort of sports and wagering space, and fundamentally wasn't my thing, but I didn't know that at the time. And I was a bit tired of it all. I went and saw this woman. She printed out my chart. It was a computer chart. And she said, these are the sorts of things that, make sense in the chart. I was like, okay, it's interesting. And they were very different to what it was that I was doing in my kind of day job. I went home that evening and my wife at the time's father-in-law was staying, and we were sitting there, and his father-in-law, who was a 95-year-old gentleman at that time, he had also done a chant just out of the blue. This man had said to me, his name was Rod, he said, listen, strange, he said, Rudy gave me your chart. He'd done it he just gave it to me when I walked out the door to come to Sydney. I said, oh, that's interesting. I had a chart done this morning. And we sat there and we got out the computer generated one that was done in this freaking old handwriting with sort of, a 96-year-old's handwriting. And of course, they were absolutely exactly the same. And the surname, no relation, was the same on both of the charts.
Wow.
And it was just like, oh, let's have a glass of wine about this one. And so I thought that was pretty profound. Now, anyway, the next day, my mother has a house, was up the road, and I went up there, and maybe I went up there for breakfast. I said, oh, a funny thing happened last night. Explained the story. She said, oh, that really is very interesting. She said, because I was going through your grandfather's old files, and I found a horoscope chart that he had done in 1929.
Wow.
And he was a very interesting man. He, had achieved a lot. He was in the war at a very young age, born in 1898. But the chart had said his true love would be his second wife. Now, in 1928, to even suggest that you might have been married twice was a big thing, but it ended up turning out to be true. I think it ended up turning true. I just thought this is such a clear indication here. And the underlying message in these charts was, do things, be of service, go and be purpose-driven. I just remember thinking, this is time to do something. And on the Friday morning, so, essentially 48 hours after that had happened, 36 hours, I drove to the office. I went into my team and I said, look, I don't choose to do this anymore. And I was in a position to, make sure that everyone was very looked after, and I wrapped that company up and I ended up selling the company. And I exited that pretty much that day. By Friday lunchtime, I was driving back, having, decided that I wasn't going to keep going down that path. And then spent the next few months sorting things out and making sure that everyone ended up employed elsewhere. I was in India kind of 3 months later on a meditation retreat when I decided to be a meditation teacher.
Literally, you heard something that you could not unhear.
I had this great big glaring flashing light saying, you've got to listen here. You've got to listen. I thought, what are the chances? What are the chances?
I think, like you said before, life leaves breadcrumbs sometimes, and other times it leaves big slaps in the face.
Big slaps in the face. And I just thought this has to be part of this continuing journey. I'd been meditating for that 8 months. Other things have changed. Like I used to drink regularly, maybe it was a glass or two at night. Maybe a few months before I'd walked in the door and Heidi, my wife at the time, and said, you haven't had a drink for 7 days. And I hadn't even thought about it, but I'd been meditating. And so my relationship with alcohol had changed. My father had died 18 months later from complications from alcohol. So there was just a few things that year, but that was just like, hey, it is now time to change direction. And I did that. Came back from India, started 12 months meditation teacher training.
How was that experience, having been quite new to it?
Really challenging, a huge commitment of time. And also because of where I'd come from, the lifestyle I'd led, the things that I'd done, to sort of take off the fast-moving entrepreneurial type hat and put on the meditation teacher hat was a big one, and it was a big one. Because I think around identity and those types of things, and all of a sudden you're doing something very different, it can come with some challenges for sure. It was a transformative year. It was a transforming time in my life. As I said, my father passed not only a few months after I'd finished that. I was actually in India when he got interesting, it was kind of uncanny. I remember I was in this hotel pool in Delhi, the Imperial Hotel in Delhi, and I remember just saying to someone there, I said, I think something's wrong with my dad, and I got up and checked my phone and my brother had texted me. And so a transformative time. And then I was fortunate to teach a lot, and I taught all over the place. Heidi and the girls, we moved to Paris not long after for 3 years. And so the kids were schooled there. And then that was at the same time that my brother and I bought Insight Timer. So I ended up moving in the teaching direction, and then was very fortunate to bring, I guess, everything that I'd learned in the business world to the acquisition that we made of Insight Timer. So I ended up, I've sort of got this very fortunate mix of things, which I teach. I'm teaching right now. Actually, I just, where I am at the moment, I've been running a course, and I'll run another one next week. And then the rest of my days are, I guess, involved in the businesses that I'm involved in. So I've ended up saying, when in doubt, do both. So
would you call it fortunate, or would you call it on your purpose path? Because I really believe when you're on your purpose path, things just magically unfold in front of you, and the doors open when you don't expect them to be opening.
Sure. For sure. I think there's part of that. So I always thought, do I have to just be, having taken off one hat, put another one? I was like, I can just put on I'm just going to take off and put on both hats. And so I've now been doing that for 8 years, and it's been very.
Well, I mean, what is the perfect balance, if there is one, between living a conscious life, a spiritual life, and being a business person, running a successful company? Where is that balance? How do we maintain not having that stressful period, those sleepless nights, all of those experiences that, you escaped and did a 180 from? How do you not get back into that?
Yeah, and look, just to clarify, it's not to say that we get to a place in the conscious center where we don't meet, where we don't come across demands in our life. I have three daughters. We've all got those demands. I mean, there's stuff that's going on, and I can safely say that maybe a few days ago, when maybe one of my daughters did something, I would have turned around and spoken, let's say, very directly to her, right? So we don't turn around and go, oh, you know what, here I am in the conscious cinema, nothing bothers me. Certainly things bother us an enormous amount less. Things are calmer, we have more time, we're more creative, we're more productive. That only means we end up actually taking on more. That's the actual fact. The idea that learn to meditate, do less, that is not true. We learn to meditate, we actually end up with more capacity. We'll end up doing a lot more and actually having a lot more time in our hands too. But the reason I say that is that what actually is the way to consider what it may be to approach business, family, friend, anything, or to approach any challenges is to what extent that I meet a demand and then I recover from that. And I think people who meditate quite a lot would say, obviously I see demands in a different way. I don't overreact to demands. We're not going to turn around and control this entire external experience. It's not possible. But my locus of control is internal. There's things going on out and in that world, but the way that I respond to them has changed. I respond appropriately and I recover really quickly. And so you get this wide angle lens approach to things. There's something that needs to be attended to. Zoom, bang, take action. Sort it out, come back ready for the next thing. And the physiology is actually responding very quickly. We're releasing stress and fatigue very regularly, and we're actually turning and going, great, focus, tick, next. And what happens is we're actually available all the time under changing circumstances. And that is something which, if we can cultivate, becomes pretty interesting, really. The flip side of that is that if we end up in a situation that is demanding and then it overwhelms us, then the body goes into fight, flight, or freeze, and we end up spending 3 days feeling bad about the fact that we got pissed off with someone, or we feel bad about the fact that something's going on in the world that we can't control. So I feel terrible. I can't believe what's going on. And so really what's happening is the body spends a whole lot of time trying to recover. And in the meantime, the world's gone by. You've had a rock in your shoe on something, so to speak. And so I think there's a different way to frame that. It's like, no, meet demands, be parent, be business owner, be executive, be any of those things. But how much is what, by the way, we all have the capacity to do that. It's to say the situations remain challenging, but my response has changed to them. And it's been said before, no stressful situations, just stressful reaction. All right. So what's all that mean? It means that I think once we can get to a place where we're on a daily basis, we're releasing stress, we're releasing fatigue, our body's feeling better, we're resting better, things get pretty interesting. It's just an interesting way to get around because you're not in monotony. And monotony is not change. And no change is no bueno.
We're building our resilience muscle and tools to have more resilience.
It's resilience. I think you can even say, we can even cultivate something that's very dynamic, and it's laden with potential. Resilience means we're coping. Of course, we'll cope, but actually we can do more than that. We can see things that otherwise may have appeared to be somewhat destructive and just seize it information. And then from that place, we're going to, if we've got the wide angle lens, then we're going to be watching things and we're going to be able to actually keep our eye on things while others are turning around going, this is a disaster. You go, oh, let's just see. Let's hold while this situation unfolds. And it's looking pretty hairy right now. I'm okay. Because the only thing that precludes us from doing that is the body starts feeling really uncomfortable. But how much can we hold? Keep the camera on it and get the amazing shot when everyone else has decided to run and flee. And that's what is possible. We all have the capacity to get a very broad-based experience of things and hold and hold and hold, and let's just see what's really going on.
I love that you, you said you're only human. You did probably lose it at your daughter, and that happened in our house last night as well.
But I know my daughters know that every now and then I'll turn around and just get angry because it's a natural human response, and quite frankly, it's probably appropriate. Well, they absolutely know is that 5 minutes later, I probably forgot about it. They'll come out and go, hi, like, yep. And there's just, they absolutely know that I'm not going to sit around for 2 days and stew about it.
Yeah.
And so that gives them permission to show emotion, get angry, and then understand that it's okay then to, maybe there's a way just to forget about it.
Yeah. I tend to address it more now. So if I do lose my shit, which still happens, once I have calmed and gone away and sort of stewed over it myself for a bit, I'll come back and then I'll explain why that happened, how I felt, how to ask how they felt, sort of talk it through a little bit more.
Absolutely. And
Pre my 180 probably wouldn't have done that either.
So important to have those conversations with our children, because then, of course, that gives them permission to have them, in the same vein. So, but that's just it. I think we need to be careful not to get to the whole, and I've said this before, but not to get into the whole detached conversation. It's like, oh, well, I'm so far back here, I don't really care what's going on and I'm detached. I think that whole detached thing's a bit misunderstood. I feel it's a bit misinterpreted, a bit misunderstood. It's an easy throwaway for people who are a bit overwhelmed and then look at the person who's not overwhelmed and go, oh, you're just doing your whole detachment thing. But in actual fact, people who are not getting overwhelmed, I think, may look like they're a bit detached from things, but they're just not getting overwhelmed. It's a big difference.
I've had this heated conversation about attachment when, friends have raised this topic and, said the key to not feeling grief or not feeling hurt or feeling negative emotions is to not have attachment. But we're here for a human experience, and attachment is a part of that human experience. I'm not here to levitate and live in another realm. I'm actually here for a human experience of emotions, feelings. Yes, some of them will be negative, some of them will not be. But I am in total agreement with you, and I'm so glad you raised that.
And it's also to say, okay, so attachments, we all know there's different attachment styles, and we can go into there's all sorts of, there's a whole thing on that. But it's also to say, well, I will be in relation, let's call it about a relationship. I'm in relationship with you, but I don't need to import, my needs are not what drive what I need from you, because then you're getting into that needy place and you're all leaning to each other. So you can still have attachment, you can still have love, you can still have relationship. But if your foundation's very strong, then of course you get to export all the parts of you that you wish to do so, and you get to share them, and the neediness is not in it, right? Which is, hey, if you behave in a certain way, I'll be okay. That's kind of attachment that takes, as opposed to going, I'm so detached, I can't even surrender the preference to have an experience to have love, right? I would prefer just to sit over here in my little silo and love the world, but I can't share that because I'm too far back.
Definitely. Coming back to that balance point, you talked about having an all or nothing approach to life, and it's probably served you really well in business. Do you still have that approach, and is it now just shifted in the way that you perceive it?
Beforehand, it was, so I'm a 7 on the Enneagram. To anyone who knows their Enneagrams, that means that I'm going to be pretty impulsive.
Can you explain that a bit?
So do you know the Enneagrams? So there's Enneagrams 1 to 9. What's a very interesting thing, maybe people in the audience have heard about the Enneagram, but it's our personality type, okay? And there are certain things, so each number represents a certain personality type. If you do the test, you can do it online, and there's a few online, and find a good one. You can't end up with a 3 and then decide you want to get a 5. It just doesn't. It's an extraordinary test where you think, really? And you can do it time and time again, and you come up with a number, and then you've got wings. So if you're a 7, maybe you've got an 8 wing and that's where it goes. The reason I say that, and maybe some people listening will understand that, the 7 typically is move very quickly, and so that can be positive, but sometimes it can be a bit too impulsive. So the mix to that, and I've never, your personality type won't change. I think what happens is maybe your physiology changes, your approach to things changes, and if you're going to be impulsive, it's because your information's better. Pre-meditation, running around, burning the candle, not feeling great the whole time, you're traipsing around in a different place. Maybe it's not as high grade, let's call it that, because it's, a different style of living, and you're waking up at 9, not at 5, and those types of things. Move through to, for me, post-meditation, my information's better. The people that I'm spending time with, I'm better. I'm up at 5, and there's a whole different read. So the information has a higher quality to it. So I'm happy to be impulsive with that sort of information because the quality of my data is better.
Wow, that's That's really interesting. And I would love to do that personality test. And actually, I'll find it and put a link to the show notes of this episode.
That's fantastic. And then you'll turn around and you look at somebody and go, you were an 8, and then your friend know what friends are. And it becomes a very interesting thing because it helps people understand each other, particularly if you're in an intimate relationship.
Yeah, similar to the human design profiles.
Human design, all that stuff I've done. I mean, there's nothing I probably haven't done. I don't think it's exploring any of this stuff, any of the knowledge, any of the traditions. But yes, the human design stuff is somewhat similar.
I'd love to jump into all of the things and experiences that you've done. Totally. What's been the most out there experience that you've gone and done?
Oh, look, I don't know if I probably did more out there things before I learned to meditate, because that was the wilder side of things. I think everything has its place. I think for me, I've got a beautiful foundation and a trunk, which is my technique and that which I'm devoted to and that which I teach, which is Vedic meditation. And so I think we all, once we know that we've got this beautiful foundation, or we've got a foundation in terms of a meditation technique that allows our mind to rest and the body to release stress and us to come back to this sort of beautiful inner experience. And there are branches to that tree that we can walk out on. And whether that's you as part of your routine, you can explore things around psychotherapies and the chiropractors and the kinesiologists, or whether, and it's a big thing in Australia right now. I think they've just gone and maybe legalized one of the first psychedelic trials. I mean, there's a whole bunch of things that people can do. It's to say, let's not be dogmatic. Let's not say that for whatever reason, this type of meditation is the only one and I practice that and I'm just going to keep the blinkers on. Let's try and remove the dogma from things, appreciate the trunk that we have as the foundation, then take a few little steps into these things, because all of them, you learn something. Inevitably, you come into contact with a healer or someone who's there to give service, which is beautiful. So there's a lovely exchange, and you'll learn something about yourself, whether it's about your personality style or this type of thing. You may be able to do work around trauma psychotherapy. I think psychotherapy is very complementary to any meditation technique. So getting into the really somatic things around what's going on in my body and moving there, and just be okay to explore that. And of course, the label like that is you're doing the reading and those types of things. And there's just a wealth of knowledge. And by the way, it's not really stuff that we all innately know. Right? I mean, that's what's going on here. If we have started down a path of meditation, or we're running around doing research, it's just that the human condition is one of forgetfulness. And then all of a sudden there's a bit of an awakening. We get into remembering, because that's what we're doing, remembering who we truly are. So it's not, people often come along and learn to meditate. I think what I try and say to people is like, hey, this is not something new. This is just you coming back to you. Maybe you've been doing research in other areas for a decade or 2 decades or lifetimes. I don't know. But remember, this experience of an inner calm, a knowingness, this internal place of happiness is not a new place. It has been there all the time. We fundamentally know that it is the human condition to feel good and to feel happy and to feel grounded. And so just reawaken that in yourself. We're not going anywhere new. We're just coming home a bit, or completely coming home. And that becomes a very far more enjoyable place to be.
It sure does. Now, you are specifically a Vedic meditation teacher. So for people listening who aren't sure what Vedic meditation is specifically, can you explain how you incorporate that perhaps into your lifestyle and how it looks?
Yeah, so the simple answer to there's heaps of meditation techniques out there, but they fall into 2 buckets. There's monastic techniques and there's householder techniques. Monastic techniques come from monasteries and temples, and they've been dating back thousands of years, and they're all fantastic. There are householder techniques, and they all come from communities and traditions, and they're all fantastic. Vedic meditation falls in the householder technique, and a lot of other stuff falls into the monastic technique. So some of the Buddhism practices and qigong and all that sort of stuff. I tried a lot of and Vipassana treats, go away and Vipassana, all that sort of stuff, which invariably, unless they've been been bundled up in an app, right, for some mindfulness product, inevitably they probably might take a bit longer. Maybe they require you to be in a quiet place. Maybe they require you to go away. Maybe they require you to spend an hour. And so I did a lot of that monastic stuff. And over the course of a decade, 7, 8 years, I just didn't continue with them. And that's not to say that any of them aren't fantastic, but for me, I kept bouncing off. I came along and learned this Vedic householder technique, which is 20 minutes twice a day. So 20 minutes in the morning, we get up, we sit comfortably, we think a mantra. That allows the mind to rest and we release stress. And in 20 minutes, heaps of good things happen. And then we go into our day, having come back in our conscious center a bit, get to the afternoon or the early evening, and we meditate again. And I found that Vedic meditation was practical. I could get up in the morning and just sit on the sofa and then get the kids up, and I meditated. And then I could drop the kids to school and then maybe drive to the coffee shop and sit in the car and have a meditate and then get a coffee. And then in the afternoon, really for the really good first few years of my daughters getting like I'd learned when they were a bit younger, I would just drive to pick them up from school and just sit outside the school and meditate for 20 minutes. And then they'd get in the car and I'd come back in my conscious cinema. I released a bit of stress from the day and they get good version of dad rather than version of dad that's still on the phone and telling them to be quiet in the back while we, rush home. So, or get home from the office, whatever it might be, and I would often just park up on the road and meditate in the car before I went into the home. So I'd come back in my conscious cinema. Before I used to walk into the home, probably walk over, bottle of wine, glass of wine, go and sit down on the sofa and have a glass and go, so how was everybody, right? That was my back in the conscious cinema moment. I'll be fine. Give me a moment. Just want to how are you today? As a meditator, it changed completely. There was none of that going on. I'd have meditated, walked in the door, and I was already back in the conscious cinema. So that's to simplify it. I think I've answered your question. We have really, I think, 2 buckets of techniques. They all are fantastic. The one that I've ended up teaching and that I've found to be so beneficial is one that was practical and I thought could be easily weaved into my daily life, whether I'm sitting at home, in the car down at the beach, on a plane, didn't really matter. In an Uber, I could just do it anywhere. And that was the reason why I stuck to it, because I found it very easy to stick to, and of course then became some of the things we've talked about earlier in this discussion, became some of the other, gotcha moments that were sort of starting to unfold as I came back a few rows.
I love that we're talking about meditation so openly these days. 10, 15 years ago just really wasn't the case. My dad gives me shit all the time about, I'm going off to meditate. And I'm like, you actually need to meditate. Most people need to meditate. Like, don't give me shit about it. Maybe try it. So I do love that the conversation is much more mainstream now. Everyone's sharing their meditation stories and it's become part of life. And I can only see in the next 10, 15 years how much more it's going to become part of life. Workplaces are bringing it in. It's everywhere. It's great. And, obviously that's a lot thanks to your platform as well, which has had 22 million users download it.
It has had a few, lots of users. Look, at the end of the day, rising tide raises all ships. There are thousands of meditation apps. There's Headspace, there's Calm, there's us, and the 3 of us are the biggest. But of course, they exist because the demand is there. And if we really want to realize why we're meditating, is because we can say in inverted commas, everyone is stressed. So the fact that everyone's gravitating towards a way to alleviate suffering is because there's obviously a problem, you see. And so we might turn around and say, well, wow, meditation's coming. It's like, yeah, but geez, there must be quite the levels of stress in society that this is where we're gravitating. And fantastic that we've got the tools to do so, and fantastic that they're accessible, whether it's an app, whether it's online, whether it's locally. Anyone really in most places can now turn around if they decide to and find a meditation teacher or do yoga or do this or have access to good information about food. But I think it is, it's indicative of the problem that we've got. I think there's something like 2,500 meditation apps on the App Store. I mean, it's crazy, but people are not sleeping very well. So we know that there's this big sleep. It's a huge, the stress epidemic, the sleep epidemic goes on and on and on. No one's sleeping, and now we're all feeling guilty about the fact we don't, because there's got to be an article in the media every week about 7 habits of how to sleep properly and listen to this and do that. And it adds a lot of pressure, but yes, meditation is certainly something that is part of people's daily routine. I think I read somewhere that it's one of the, I'll have to find out, but there was some Google search I saw that Australia ranks in some like top 5 countries around people who search for meditation. And they're doing that because I think they want some respite from stress.
Absolutely. I've been getting really into sound frequencies and sort of playing them while I'm working, playing them while we're having dinner instead of having the TV blaring in the background, just before bed, playing some different sleep frequencies. And that's really shifting that balance in the mind and bringing it down to another level before you go off to rest for the night and helping you ease into sleep a lot more.
Yeah, no, it does. And so there are a lot of things we can do, and whether it's the sounds, the ambient music, the meditation, just some of those basic things that mean that the body can just let stress out. Because if we don't let stress out, stress stays in the body. And if stress stays in the body, leads to inflammation, and inflammation leads to disease. So, I repeat the words of others I know, but, stress is the thief in the night. right? Because you kind of know that you're feeling it, but you don't really know how to attend to it. And if you don't really get around to doing something about it, it just goes into your body, and the nervous system can get overwhelmed by that, which is where people lead to feeling very anxious and not sleeping very well. And it becomes a bit of a challenging cycle. So if we can on a daily basis let out as much or more stress than we put into us, we're getting ahead of the game. And anyone who meditates twice a day will release more stress than they can actually accrue. And so that's it. People who are meditating regularly, no matter what the demands are, they're pretty much going to start to say, well, I'm getting ahead of it here. It's 2 steps forward, 1 step back, but there's progress. And my physiology, I don't know, I'm doing all right, feeling pretty good. And, we sort of can, we slow down the aging clock, no question.
Oh, well, there's another benefit. More sleep, less stress, slow down the aging clock. Listen to your intuition, the endless health benefits to what meditation.
Well, but it's a beautiful point when you say listen to your intuition, but in actual fact, you get to access a more fine level of intuition and feeling because it's not completely, there's not some layer of stress and mess and everything that you've got to wade through to try and find what's going on. You're sort of in this place where information, the quality of your data is better because of the life you should lead. And so you get to actually really sit with that and go, from a fine level, I think I know where to move. You see, that's all that beautiful stuff.
I just want to ask this one final question before I let you go. But you have mentioned alcohol a lot throughout this conversation because it was the thing that calmed you when you were in that lifestyle. Have you now removed alcohol completely from your life?
Yeah. So after I learned to meditate, I didn't touch a drop for 7 years. That was just, it didn't particularly interest me. I was teaching meditation, so the two, from my perspective, didn't mix. I was at a wedding a month ago, and you're all sitting around and they bring around a glass of champagne and you're going to cheers the bride and groom. And I think it's a nice thing to do, you see. So for a shared experience and celebrating something, great. I'll have a, I'll sort of cheers. I had my 50th birthday. Some friends took me to lunch and, they all wanted to have a drink at lunch, and I wasn't, they gave me a beautiful gift, and I wasn't going to sit there and go, no, I'm not going to have a drink. I was like, sure, let's just have have a drink to celebrate something because it's nice to share, you see. So I went from really not doing so to really understanding that it was fine to not go into certain places, let's say, people now know that I just don't. People don't even offer me a drink, and people are okay with that. But sometimes it's nice to, not be dogmatic. Just go, sure, it's just a nice glass of wine and a beautiful thing and great, beautiful.
You've shifted, by the sounds of it, your relationship to what you had with alcohol.
Completely shifted it. As I explained, my dad, my father's relationship was it essentially meant that, he passed away by virtue of alcohol. So there was part of that knew that I should probably take all that a little bit seriously. Of course, I can hear myself go, well, I was never that, but who knows? Who knows where that might have ended up. So, but I think I don't want people to sit there and think, I've got to learn to meditate and stop everything and become this paragon of virtue. Not at all. We're just got to, we get to enjoy things. We get to do things in moderation. We get to, do things in a more balanced way, right? Regular meditators just don't feel like they need the pickup because you're feeling so good all the time. You just are. You're just feeling great. You've got on a natural supply of good chemicals. And we know that alcohol and any other substance only triggers certain things, in your brain to make you feel better. When you're feeling good all the time, in actual fact, alcohol will make you feel worse. I had this conversation at lunch today, actually about an hour ago. They said, the guys I was teaching you meditate, they said, you drink? I said, look, I don't so much because I find that it just dulls things. My senses become dull. I don't feel great. So that's that topic.
As Wim Hof says, the breathwork instructor, get high on your own supply.
That's true. It's so true. And I've been to weddings and parties and things like that and had the best time all night. And I'm sure everyone may have thought that, I was, high on something. But of course, they all know that I was just, high on what we all have at the capacity to unlock and enjoy all the time, which is the chemicals that exist in our bodies. And that's a proper high.
Exactly. Well, this morning before we connected and had this beautiful conversation, I jumped on Insight Timer and I did your 10-minute universal breath meditation, which was absolutely divine. How can others, well, there's one on there that people can experience, but how can we as a collective enjoy what you have to offer as a Vedic meditation teacher?
No, thank you. I mean, my website is nichoplowman.com. That'll be in the show notes. I have a very simple website. I still do 10 years in. It's like
it is very simple. I did notice that. I love it. Very clean, very, very easy to navigate.
Navigating one page pretty much. I probably need to get my act together on that one, but I keep saying that I will. But people can email me and just, info@nichoplowman.com. That's how I do it. My Instagram and those types of things are very, I'm never really on those types of places. I have a LinkedIn profile now, but, if people wish to find me, I'm very available. I run courses regularly in Sydney, and it's something which I love to do. And if people would love to join me on that, fantastic.
I'm sure you'll have them lining up. Next time I'm in Sydney, I'll connect with you and
I'd be really great.
Face-to-face meditation with you. Thank you so much, Nicho, for this amazing, intriguing conversation. I hope there was something in this that our listeners could not unhear. For me, I've got a lot of takeaways that some things that I definitely knew and other things I needed reminders about and other things that, are brand new to me. So I love everything that you shared with us today, and I can't wait to see where your journey continues.
Thank you, Ribs. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to the show. What did you think? And what did you feel? Let us know by leaving me a message on the Things You Can't Unhear Instagram community page. And if you can, give us some ratings love on your favourite listening platform.